to say a few words first, or did you want to just take questions first?
I am so impressed to see all of you have watched the movie, and now you have someone that survived it. And I will look forward to answer your questions.
You guys, I know you prepared some questions, and this gives you the time to ask them. One person to get us started.
How old were you when you were at the factory?
How old were you when you were at the factory?
I was about going on 14 years old. 14, yes.
Weren't you a little bit young to be at the factory? Of your true age?
Well, no. I guess God made me look older, and I had to pretend that I am older in order to be accepted. So, that's quite a story, how I got on that list. So, I don't know where to start, but before being on Schindler's List, I went through some other difficulty in order to survive. I was born in Krakow as one of a family of 7. In 1939, when the Germans occupied Krakow, I was 10 years old. It was September, and I was looking forward to enter my 4th grade and being very excited about it. Started the school, and then in a couple weeks later, I heard an announcement that all the educational institutions are strictly forbidden for Jews. And so, excuse me. And so, at that time, they also announced that Krakow must become Jews-free. And that we, the Jews, later on, the Jews have an option. Either they also build a ghetto in Krakow. So then the announcement came that either Jews, they have 2 options, either to live in the ghetto or to a few small towns around, not far from Krakow. My parents, after discussing these options, decided to move to a small town. In 1940, when did we move? In 1940, anyway, around this time, we were living in a small town called Swaniki. In 1940, actually, in the beginning of 1942, the Germans decided to eliminate the Jews from these small towns, saying that it's getting to be overcrowded and they'll be going to a better place. No one knew where that other place was because not a single person came back to tell us about it. They simply vanished without a trace. And then, a few months later, rumors were that our town is going to be next. That all the Jews from Swaniki are going to be resettled. And at that time, my mother Oh, I did not mention that by that time, my older brother and sister were working in Krakow in a camp. So my mother decided, when she heard about the resettlement, decided that I should leave home and volunteer in a camp where my brother and sister was working. I was only 13 years old. So my mother said, you have to take off your armband with a Star of David, which was really, when you took it off, it was a penalty of death. But she insisted that I go on the roads, hitchhike a ride to Krakow, volunteer in the camp where my brother and sister was working, and to say that I was 3 years older in order to be accepted. I was crying, I didn't want to go, but I had no choice. I had to follow my mother's instructions. I came to the camp, the gate to the camp, and the assessment asked me for my identification papers. I said, I don't have any papers. I came to volunteer to work in the camp. He said, not having papers is against the law. You'll go to jail until the Gestapo decide what to do with you. The Gestapo, which was the most brutal German police. So I was taken to jail, but next morning they decided to let me into the camp. And so then, being in the camp, what did I do next? Yeah. So, yes, but a few months later, that camp was closed down, and we were sent to Krakow Ghetto. Krakow Ghetto, from Krakow Ghetto, I was sent to Camp Plaszów, the camp which was depicted in the movie Schindler's List. From there, my brother was there already, and my older sister was there. And so when I came, they gave me a job in the laundry. And a couple of weeks later, a German officer came in, picked a few women, me among them, and said, you are going to work in Schindler's factory. We didn't know who Schindler was, where the factory was. And for me, this was a very hard thing because that meant to part with my brother. My sister already was taken to a different camp. And so when I met him later that day and told him that I was selected to work in Schindler's factory, he said, don't worry about it. I'll do everything I can to get you out of this group. But somehow he was not able to. And if he would have been able to, I probably would not survive. Anyway, when we came to Schindler's factory, they designated each one of us to a different job. My job was the factory was producing pots and pans, and it was divided into two separate buildings. One part was forming the pots and pans on different kind of machines. The other part was dipping them in enamel, sending them to the ovens to bake in the enamel. My job was to carry the pots and pans to the ovens to bake in the enamel. The heat and the weight was so unbearable that I didn't believe that I will survive at it for very long. A couple days later, Schindler appeared on the factory floor. He came in looking around, then he stopped, started to observe me. I became frightened because being observed by a German was a very dangerous sign. I was sure that he does not like the way I carry out my job, and he thinks how to punish me. So when I saw him coming towards me, my heart pounded with fear. Finally, he stopped me, asking me if I would rather clean the offices. And I don't know where I got the courage to ask him that I have a friend that I'm working here with. Could she possibly work with me on that new job? And he said, yes, but first find my secretary. She'll be your boss, and she'll tell you what your job will be. Well, this was the easiest job. This was the most, it was not like being in a camp at all, for me in particular, because I had access anytime, anywhere. I had freedom, and most of the time I would look for him to give him messages. Someone was calling. I was very free. And then after, what was next day?
Well, they may have some more questions.
Huh?
They may have some more questions.
Oh yeah. Well, so far, what are your questions?
This is my hero. And this is a person who, without a question, has inspired me in ways that you cannot begin to imagine. One of the few people I call my girlfriend, but she's so much more than that. You can learn so much from her just by watching the dignity with which she faces life. So I need you to do something for me. I need you to stand and show her cover. Shut up.
You already mentioned that you met Oscar Schindler when he offered you the job position. Was he in the factory floor regularly? In the movie, it kind of gave the impression he was there very frequently.
Was Schindler on the factory floor regularly?
Yes, he was on the Schindler on the floor regularly, being in touch with all his workers, with all his Jewish workers. He saw to it that we have everything. I have to tell you something about Schindler personally, what I experienced. When I heard that my brother in Plaszow was going to be sent to another camp, I was devastated to know that when he'll go away, I won't know whether I'll ever see him again. So I was crying all night, not being able to do anything about it. Next morning, when I came to work, my boss, the secretary, Schindler's secretary, asked me, well, what happened to you? And I told her that I heard that my brother is going to may go away and I'll never see him again. And I cannot see him, I cannot do anything about it. So she said to me, I'll tell you what, I'll cut out a piece of time with Dr. Schindler. You talk to him, I'm sure that he can help you. So it happened. He was on the dentist chair. I came. He said, I know why you are here. I'll tell you what you do. And by the way, before I continue, we were daily having contact with Plaszow, getting food and getting supplies, all kinds. So we were in contact with Camp Lasher daily. So he said to me, go to Dr. Rubinstein, who was our doctor in camp. Tell him that you need to see a eye specialist in Camp Lasher, because this is where the main hospitals were in help. And tell him to give you a referral to him. You don't have to go to any doctor, just see your brother. And by the way, my brother was a watchmaker working for the Germans. By the way, if your brother wants to come here, we can use a watchmaker. I was in seventh heaven. So I went to Dr. Rubinstein, telling him what Schindler told me. And he says to me, do you know if I would do this, and they will find out it is not true, that I'll get a bullet in my head? I cannot do it. And so I went back to Schindler, told him what Dr. Rubinstein told me. He said, you go back to camp, tell Dr. Rubinstein to come with you. I want to talk with him. This was an enormous thing that I never would have expected from Schindler. And so he came with me, and he told him, you do this, and I will take the responsibility. And of course, when I came to Plaszow and saw my brother, he said, don't worry, they still need us here. We are not going anywhere. But this was something that is simply unforgettable about a man with a good heart.
Were you, and how did you feel when the Jews were liberated?
Where were you and how did you feel when the Jews were liberated?
When what?
When the Jews were liberated.
Where I was when the Jews were liberated. I was in Czechoslovakia, where his factory moved from Poland to Czechoslovakia. It was a miracle that we survived in Czechoslovakia. What happened was the German who was over us, he had power over us. He sent, when the Russians were coming closer, he asked into Germany, what should I do with the Jews? And the answer was, just kill them off. The answer came to Schindler addressed, rather than to this German. And there was a guy who, by the way, who became a Supreme Court judge, Moshe Beisky. He was able to write back to Germany, to Berlin, saying that what was it? Oh, that he will do this or something like this. He knew that by the time they will get it, the Russians will be here, that he won't be able to do anything. However, before that, Schindler bought for his own money some weapons and distributed them among the men, knowing that the time will come when the Jews will be in danger. And so on May the 8th in the morning, when I got up to another day of work, and I heard some commotion, and I didn't know what was going on. And I looked downstairs, and I could not believe what I saw. I saw our few men standing with the weapons, protecting us, the weapons which was bought by Schindler. And of course, Schindler's life was in danger, so we have saved him to carry him through to the American zone. And this is how he survived. Any questions?
What brought you to America? The States.
Yeah, that's a good question. What brought me to America? We were liberated in Germany, in Poland, and went to Germany. From there, we knew that someday we will go to Israel. But as it was what was going on at that time, my brother also decided maybe we ought to go to the United States. And so he decided that this is what we will do for now. And I went to Israel, but he said, you go to Israel to visit. Maybe you want to stay there. I'll tell you, this was enormous experience for me to be in Israel, to see our might, our military protecting our country. This was an enormous, I was so emotional at seeing all of this. But I was too young to decide to be on my own. So I came back and we came to this country.
Did you make any friends in the factory that you stayed in contact with afterwards?
Did you make any friends in the factory that you stayed in contact with?
This is a very unusual question. I'll tell you, I was lucky to make friends wherever I was. Friends were always very important to me. Actually, there was one who, as I mentioned before, there were three brothers. One of them who became Moshe Beisky, who became the
Supreme Court Justice.
The Supreme Court Justice. His younger brother was a close friend of mine. And when the decision came to go to Israel or to Poland, they were going to Israel, the three brothers. And Yuri Beisky, his younger brother, I said, I will eventually come to Israel, but I have to go to Poland to meet my brother. And then I will go to Israel. So the younger brother wanted to come with me. And Moshe Beisky says, talk him out of it. Don't let him go to Poland. You come with us. And so I said, well, eventually I'll come. But then I heard, and by the way, Yuri Beisky helped me a lot because he was like a page boy, doing all sorts of things around Schindler and around his brother. And so when I was in contact with friends with Israel, and I asked to find Yuri so I can write to him. And the answer was that he was killed in the first fight with the Arabs when they arrived. So this was a very, very sad news. And
what was your experience like after the Holocaust war ended? Like, how was it going back to normal after something so extreme happened?
What was your experience like after the Holocaust, and how were you able to go back to normal?
that is a heavy question. How I was able to get back to normal after the war. Well, my main luck was that I found my brother and my sister. And we came to this country trying to get back to normal life. Each one of us had a different job. My brother was sort of an inventor, and so he was able to establish a business, a jewelry business, where I was helping out in Berlin while we were waiting to come to this country. And I was always close with them. But when we came here, this was something that we really decided to go back to normal. Each one of us had a different job and got married and got families. And I was really amazed how much I could accomplish. When I met my husband, who was very ambitious and got into engineering. Actually, before he got to engineering, I'll give you a story. He was also in Auschwitz. And when they stripped him from his belongings, he promised himself that if he should survive the war, he will get as much education as he'll be able to, so that no one will ever be able to take it away from him. And so he did follow up that. He started with electrical engineering, got his bachelor's when he came here, got his master's, and got his PhD, and wound up with a very important government job, to a job with a mission to what is the word I'm looking for? To defend our country. So, what else? They're very
How specifically did you get to Maryland and where you are now?
How did you wind up in Maryland?
How I wound up in Maryland. At first, my brother was designated to Des Moines, Iowa, and my sister in Kansas City. My sister came first, my brother came next, and I was the third one, because there were quotas of how many people at a time they would allow to come. And so I followed to Des Moines, Iowa. And and I cannot resist to tell you a funny story about when we were in the camp waiting to be shipped to the United States. We were in a camp and we were socializing. There was one guy and we were the dancers, one guy who was designated to go to Chicago. When I came to Des Moines, Iowa, my brother said, you know, there's someone asking for you. And I said, who is it? Finally, when I found out who it was, I was surprised because I said to him, I thought you're going to Chicago. But when I heard that you're going to Des Moines, Iowa, I think, but from there, but he was not my type, so. But from there, my brother got a better job in Omaha, Nebraska. In Omaha, Nebraska, I got a job, and then I was not happy in the job. My brother opened up a little jewelry store. He was having a job, but I was in the little store taking some watchmaking. And so at least I did not have to work for anybody. But then in the evening, I was going to school, to high school, to catch up with my English and with history and everything that was possible for me to learn in the evening high school. So then, from there, I decided to go to Kansas City to live near my sister because we have a lot in common. I really loved my sister. So I got a job in a jewelry store, a beautiful job, also because of someone young who was in the jewelry business and opened up the door for me to a better job.
How did you end up in Maryland?
Oh, I forgot the question.
Well, you were in a lot of places.
I was in so many places, yeah. Well, my husband, after finishing his studies, had all kinds of offers to IBM, to Bell Telephone, he was very good. Each company was eager to have him wherever he had an interview. And so we made special trips to all these companies in different places. And when we came back to Florida, he said, now with all the places, where would you like to live? I said, anywhere but Baltimore. Because we went through the worst part of Baltimore. And I thought this was Baltimore. But then Westinghouse, we could not refuse the big offer he got. So finally, I discovered that there is much more to Baltimore than I thought.
So we want to thank you for coming in. We could listen to you God bless you, and hopefully we'll be together again next year, and we can continue the conversation. So thank you.
Maybe Schindler had like his right-hand man, like the financial advisor, Stern. Did you know him? Like, was he around?
In the movie, his right-hand man was Stern, played by a guy who played Gandhi, Ben Kingsley. Did you know Stern?
No, I didn't know.
Was Stern supposed to be an amalgam of multiple people, with like a representation of multiple people?
I had a question. I know when they were typing up the list and everybody got this number, 1 through 1200, where were you on the list?
I was the 16th. The 16th.
16th. Wow.
Because of the last name, right? Because it started with a B, right?
Was it alphabetical?
Was it?
I thought it was completely alphabetical.
Because it's Bruno Grabber, so BR.
Okay, once again, thank you.
The trains was sent to Auschwitz. I want to know if you were a part of that group that was sent there accidentally. No, you weren't?
No.
Okay.
But isn't that how you ended up in Auschwitz?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that how you ended up in Auschwitz? Because you were sent mistakenly from Schindler's factory, and you thought only a miracle could get you out of Auschwitz.
Oh, yeah. I misunderstood. Yes, that part, it was very, very important that you're talking about. Because when we were sent out of that list into getting into the trains, we were sure that we were going. And then unexpectedly at night, when they opened the doors, yes, you are really very right about that. We all were, not only me, but we all were.
Yeah.
But we were lucky then that Schindler did not give up. When the women did not arrive on time, he made his business to interfere with the way they were working in
It's a good question.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much.
Entire time, like during the whole war, was there any specific like words or a saying or a meaning that really just kept you hopeful, or like that it's like was inspiring to you and like really just kept you like going without like giving up or anything?
What is it that kept you going during the darkest times when there seemed to be no hope, when you were in the camps and everything? Is there anything that, any words, any memories?
We were with Schindler to the last minutes, and we did not experience any threats from anybody. We knew that he will protect us, and he was our God, really.
Thank you.